Welcome, everybody, to the Ever Evolving Truth. My name is Jeff. I'm here with Court, and we are here live for the first time in a long time. But of course, we have a monumental verdict in a case that everybody's been following to talk about. Court, thank you for joining us before you have to go to work here. Before we get into it, I'd like to read some excerpts from the New York Times article about this verdict. Uh, in the Kyle Rittenhouse court case, the jury deliberated for 3.5 days. Rittenhouse, who shot 3 men, 2 of them fatally during demonstrations in Kenosha, Wisconsin, was charged with 5 felony counts. We'll get into those in a second. After about 26 hours of deliberation, the jury appeared to accept Mr. Rittenhouse's explanation that he had acted reasonably to defend himself in an unruly and turbulent scene. August 2020, 2 days after a white Kenosha police officer had shot Jacob Blake, a black resident. Thomas Binger, the assistant district attorney who led the prosecution of Kyle Rittenhouse after the jury found him not guilty on all counts. The jury has represented our community in this trial and has spoken. Kyle Rittenhouse sobbed and was held by his lawyers after the jury finished reading its verdict, finding him not guilty on all counts for the killing of 2 people and wounding of a third in unrest in August 2020. Quiet gave way to joyful shouts from Kyle Rittenhouse supporters on the courthouse steps after the verdicts were announced. The jury has found Kyle Rittenhouse, 18, not guilty on all counts in the shooting of 3 men. The judge says he could not have asked for a better jury regarding their attentiveness. On the first count, first-degree reckless homicide for killing Joseph Rosenbaum, the jury finds Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty. On the second count, first-degree reckless endangerment for shooting a man, the jury finds Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty. On the third count, first-degree reckless endangerment for shooting an unknown man, the jury finds Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty. On the fourth and most serious count, first-degree intentional homicide for killing Anthony Huber, the jury finds Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty. On the fifth count, first-degree attempted intentional homicide for shooting and wounding Gage Grosskreutz, the jury finds Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty. I don't know if everybody watching or listening right now has listened to this morning's episode, but if you haven't, I encourage you to do so because Abby Sterner, who is our resident expert on this trial, watched over 20 hours of trial footage and really broke down why she thought that despite whatever you feel personally about this case, that he was going to be found not guilty. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, she nailed it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily surprised when I read that the verdict was he was found guilty on all counts, just because legally it was going to be very hard to prove that there was they're charging him with first degree or trying to find him guilty of first degree. And there's not enough, in my personal opinion, there wasn't enough evidence to prove that it was premeditated. I mean, we discussed how it's obvious he had to have some sort of idea of what he was going to be doing with that gun, going there with, a weapon of that size. You know you're going to have to use it at some point.
Yeah. Let's welcome in our friend Jordan Henning. How are you, Jordan?
Okay.
In your personal life,
my personal life is okay. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, we haven't talked to you in a while. I was just explaining to whoever's listening our episode that came out this morning. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it, but Abby has watched over 20 hours of trial footage, and she really broke down why, despite what you think personally, why she thought it was going to be very difficult to find Kyle Rittenhouse guilty, especially of the first-degree felony charges, and she nailed it. And I don't want to put words in her mouth because she did such an eloquent job of breaking it down, but it really came down to proving that it wasn't self-defense. And based on the footage that they saw, that we saw, and they showed, it looked like there was an element of self-defense. Now, again, despite what you think personally, I don't know if you've ever been a juror on a trial, but the judge lays out the law and it's really black and white. They make it so that there's no gray area. And even if you have any sort of empathy or sympathy for the person defending themselves, if it doesn't match up with the law, it's tough to go against even what you feel personally. So I know you have a lot of thoughts on this, and I'm anxious to hear them. And I know you've probably been following it, just as closely as anyone. So the floor is yours. Let's hear what you got to say about this.
Well, I mean, you hit it. It's just disappointing that the situation unfolded as it did. But like the prosecutors really, I mean, they really messed it up. Like they, the prosecutor is known to be a line walker, and this judge is known to be a hard ass, and he pissed him off a few times. And going into it, you could already tell that the judge wasn't having any of the the normal stuff that would happen. And they didn't do a good job. They didn't do a good job presenting the information, but they were also hamstrung because the judge wouldn't allow certain things that they know could have gone towards his mindset, and proving that this self-defense wasn't as defense oriented as they thought. And I think one of the key pieces of information that they didn't allow in because it was hearsay was a supposed conversation that Kyle had with a friend prior to the riot, where he's mentioned something about shooting BLM protesters. So it is difficult when you're trying to put all the facts together, and the law makes it a lot harder in certain circumstances than others. And this is one of those circumstances where they had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did not fear for his life, regardless of the fact that he committed felony crimes in order to be in that situation in the first place.
That's a great point.
My biggest protest about what happened was something that honestly no one talked about, but the judge threw out the misdemeanor charges, the gun charges that he was facing.
Yes,
but
yes.
No one seemed to say anything, but he was unlawfully carrying a loaded firearm, and that is beyond a reasonable doubt. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It doesn't matter the reasons he was doing it. He was carrying that firearm illegally. So I don't understand. I don't understand how that charge could have even been thrown out. So the fact that he threw out the one charge that was guaranteed in my mind, and now he's acquitted on all of the assault charges and the murder charges, that makes sense. I get it. Like, the law is the law. We can't be super upset about it, even though, if this was a person of color, he probably would have been shot by the police in the street as a, instead of being let go. And, that's another conversation. But, the fact that the one charge that was basically a guaranteed guilty, he threw out for some stupid reason, right? Now, that is good news because he can actually be retried on that now, but it didn't make any sense.
I'm glad you brought that up because Abby did mention that on today's show, and she said there was some gray area there, and this is where the judge kind of comes off a little biased towards Kyle Rittenhouse, because apparently the law was targeted for like sawed off or altered weapons to target gang violence. So it was like it's left up to the judge's discretion as to whether he wanted to keep that charge or not. So there were laws that seem to favor certain people and they seem unfair to others. This one gave the judge some wiggle room to decide which way he wanted to go, and that in and of itself seems like it's unfair, because, like you said, it's a straight. Everything else is just straight black and white, and then there's this one, the one, like you said, we all thought it was guaranteed that he was at least going to get, and this that carried some potential jail time too. That even though it was a misdemeanor, we all thought, that was a shoo-in to get him on, no matter what happened with the other 5 felonies. Let's actually bring in Abby so she can speak to what she was saying on this morning's show. I know she only has a couple minutes because she is slammed. And also, if you ever need a cake, Abby is the master cake
I'm
maker.
literally
Go check out her
surrounded by cake
Instagram.
and frosting right now.
How you doing, Abby? Thanks for stopping in.
Hey, I'm good. I didn't hear anything you guys have already talked about, so
So essentially, we literally just got on, and I had mentioned that you spent when we recorded on Wednesday, but this morning's episode, if whoever's watching now wants to go back and listen to it, you laid out everything you learned from the case, and essentially, to paraphrase what you said, despite what your personal feelings are, he was going to be found not guilty, and you nailed it.
Yeah, based specifically on the charges they brought against him. I liked the way Leah had put it. You know, was the case proven or not proven? And I think the prosecution failed to prove his guilt. I don't think that means he's innocent.
Yeah. You know, some of the let me pull in Cherise from the Existential Ginger. She writes, "For me, my anger about the verdict isn't about the verdict itself. It's the fact that black men are 4 times more likely to be wrongly convicted than white men. If Kyle were black, he'd be dead or in jail." And I think we all echo those sentiments, because he probably, most likely, in all fairness, he would not have made it to trial. He would not have had his day on the stand.
I think that's absolutely correct, although I think that's more of a problem with how black people are treated in the judicial system than this case not being tried fairly.
Yeah.
And
You know,
even Jeff, we had a previous conversation about the problems with bail reform too.
Yes.
And just the fact that this individual, through the promotion of right-wing, because this became a political issue, through the promotion of right-wing news outlets and Christian fundamentalist organizations and white supremacist organizations, was able to crowdfund $1 million or whatever it was to actually pay his bail. It's a lot different. I truly wish more people would understand this. It is a lot different when you show up in a suit as a freed person who was able to make bail versus a suit coming from the jail and you've been there for the past year and a half. Juries look at people who can't make bail, who've already been incarcerated, as more guilty than those who can make bail and have been out free. And in this situation, I can almost guarantee that his ability to make bail had an impact on the jury's outlook of him as a person, right? As opposed to if it might have been a person in poverty, or that this wasn't picked up by media and it wasn't given the national attention that it had, and he had been in jail this whole time. I can guarantee that there would have been implicit biases present that weren't present because of the way this rolled out.
I think that's
Great
valid,
point.
and I think you're probably correct about that. What do you guys think, though? What do you guys think, though, about the fact that it took the jury 3 days to come to a consensus? Because I think that says a lot.
I do too.
I was talking about this with a coworker yesterday, that when you see them deliberate for, an extended period of time, they were it was almost 4 days. If I remember correctly, they were going, today was the 4th day that they had to go into deliberations. And it's almost never a good sign when you have to go into deliberations for that long, because I honestly thought that the jury was going to be deadlocked. I thought that there was going to be some people who did want to find him guilty, and that there was going to be people who were, obviously looking at it from a proper stance and finding him not guilty as they did today. In all reality, that kind of slightly might have been my hope for that, just because I would feel like there was another opportunity to maybe change the charges and to actually find him guilty of something, because I do believe that he's guilty of something. It's not first-degree murder, but he needs to be held accountable for his actions.
One of the things that irritates me the most about this, because he was found innocent of all charges, or I should say he was found not guilty of all charges, is he going to have any kind of limitations put on him going forward with his ability to own firearms.
Nope.
Because based on his own testimony, he picked an assault rifle because he thought it looked cool, and he was completely ignorant. According to him, I don't believe him, but according to him, he was completely ignorant of the ammunition he chose too. And it just, you know, Courtney, you have said you're a Second Amendment advocate. While I'm not a gun enthusiast, I also believe in the Second Amendment. And I feel like anyone who is an advocate of the Second Amendment should be infuriated that this kid is now going to be able to own whatever guns he wants when he has proven complete ignorance.
I have to agree with you. I absolutely have to agree with you on that one. I don't think that he should have the legal right to ever possess a gun, ever.
Yeah.
And going back to what you were talking about earlier, Jordan, I hope that they do end up pressing charges again with this weapons charge. You know, the fact that the judge was able to throw this out based on a loophole of the barrel length of the gun is completely neglecting the fact that it was in the possession of a 17-year-old across state lines. We talked about this on today's episode of even if it's 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 3 hours, it doesn't fucking matter. The fact is it was a 17-year-old in possession of a rifle across state lines. That is breaking the law in 2 different ways. And that's
actually obtained illegally.
It's actually 3 different ways because he asked his friend to purchase the weapon for him, knowing that he wasn't legally able to purchase it himself. So this wasn't Kyle saying, "Hey, you have an AR, you don't really like it. I want to buy it from you. You're my friend. Will you sell it to me off the books?" This was, "Here's my money. I can't buy this. You go do it for me." So that's conspiracy to commit a felony charge, right? So they could have gotten him on a conspiracy charge in Illinois versus the stuff in Wisconsin too. So he could still potentially be facing charges in Illinois where the weapon was purchased, but he could also be seeing federal charges, interstate violation of firearms, like transportation of firearms across state borders as a minor. So I want to go back to that question, and my answer to why do you think it took so long to come to this verdict is it's very simple in my mind. This is a classic example of someone being acquitted on charges legally while those actions that led to those charges were morally repugnant.
Yes.
Right? So that's what you see there is the jury and deliberations where people are looking at it from a moral perspective and other people having to slowly chip away at their morality and say, this isn't about morality, this is about law. And this is a perfect example where there's a glaring difference in between what is morally right and what is legally right. If this was a moral case, he'd be in jail for the rest of his life because every single action and behavior leading up to this is morally repugnant on both Kyle and his mother. But legally, it's not the same situation. And it's disheartening for those of us who understand that. You know, but at the same time, we were probably setting ourselves up for disappointment thinking that the legal system is equal to a moral system of justice.
Right. And that's a great point. Let me ask a couple questions here. Obviously, if the state of Illinois wanted to pursue charges, that was, that's their jurisdiction. They do it how they're going to do it. My question would be, do you think that they were waiting for the outcome of this trial to decide if they were going to do it? And the second question I have is, if federal charges were to be brought, who brings them? Is this something that like Merrick Garland would take on himself? Would that be political suicide, or would it be something that might dispel some potential violence that's going to result from this?
Who wants to take that one first?
The first question is probably yes. They're probably waiting for the outcome of this charge because these were the more serious charges. So when there is violation in multiple different courts of law, they will always defer to the most significant charges first and allow those to be carried out and then go back. So what I think is going to happen here is if Illinois so chooses, now they're going to file charges. If those charges are unsuccessful, then the last part that will happen is determining whether or not that local federal jurisdiction, and it wouldn't be Garland because there are federal district attorneys in each of the different federal courts. And I think there are 11 federal courts. So obviously Merrick Garland would be their boss, but it would be their determination on whether or not to file those charges. So I think we're going to see charges in Illinois. And then if those are unsuccessful, which I don't think they will be, we could see in whatever federal district court after that.
Yeah, I think he has to get charged with the possession of weapons charge. And going back to the law that allowed them to throw that out in this case, yes, the judge had the right to make that ruling, but that law is based on kids being in possession of a gun for hunting purposes versus kids being in possession of the weapon for like gang related crimes. That's why it specifically talked about the length of the barrel. But it was really like about shotguns. Is it a shotgun for hunting or is it a shotgun to be used in crimes, like a sawed-off shotgun? And the fact that it was an assault rifle being used for non-hunting related purposes, I can't believe he ruled that way.
Well, and you would even have to check with the local laws about hunting, because I know in Pennsylvania you are not allowed to hunt with a semi-automatic weapon, and therefore it wouldn't be applicable in that scenario. I don't know if Wisconsin is the same, but again, yeah, there's other things that he could have taken into account. Yeah.
So real quick, guys, I'm just going to play some B-roll footage that I was able to get. Actually, no, I'm not right this second. But I will. Just when I do that, you have to remember just to unmute your microphones, because it automatically mutes us when I do that. But otherwise, we're just going to continue right now as we go. I don't have it uploaded yet, or it didn't upload yet. That makes sense. So
yes,
the other thing I want to mention too, or I want to talk about, are we looking at a repeat of August or the summer of 2020?
Yeah, that was going to be my. Have you guys heard anything about what's going on in Kenosha right now?
Not yet.
No, but I've already heard. I have family members that live, in different states across the country, and they've already heard rumors of larger cities that are close to them. Down in Tennessee is one of them, that there are going to be riots, and this was something that people said weeks ago, that if Kyle Rittenhouse is found not guilty, they will burn the city to the ground. And I was talking to one of my friends about this, and getting his opinion on what do you think is going to happen, and we both think the same thing, that it's going to be worse. It's going to be like August 2020 but worse. And it's going to, I think it's going to be even more scary than it was then.
Well, you have higher tensions now because people are really upset about this. And then on the flip side, now you have these militia groups who are going to feel emboldened to come out and patrol the streets. And if the tensions are higher and people feel more justified to be out there with their weapons, I can't imagine it's going to end terribly well.
That's a good point, Abby. The militia that now feels emboldened, like they're unstoppable, they're untouchable, right? Now they think that no matter what they do, they can go out there and they can get acquitted based on a self-defense argument. That's a scary thought, because when those two forces combine, and I'm not advocating for either one. I again, nobody we've ever had on this show advocates for violence. What I've said is that you have to understand why the violence is happening in order to fix it, in order to stop it. And people still have the right to protest. If people want to go out into the streets peacefully and protest this verdict, they have every right to do so peacefully. My fear is not only that it turns into violence, But what we've seen this past summer is that there are people on the other side that try to incite the violence, try to cause the violence, and then blame it on the protesters. That's one thing that I'm afraid of. Number two, I'm afraid that even if it is completely peaceful, you will have these emboldened militia groups creating tension for no reason other than that they just support Kyle Rittenhouse and they think that everybody that protests is Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
All I have to
I'm not
say,
going to be able to.
No, sorry. Cool. I just want to say all I have to say, because I have to go. That's my half an hour break at work. I just wanted to pop on and talk about it. But all I have to say is I'm just going to be praying that the gentlemen down in Georgia get convicted, because not only do I agree with what's been said so far about the Rittenhouse verdict, I think that if things don't go according to how people want them to in that regard, you're just going to see a complete implosion societally in a lot of different areas about this kind of stuff. But love you guys. Have a safe rest of your day. I got to get back to work.
Hey,
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you,
on.
Jordan.
See ya.
That was Jordan Henning. We appreciate his thoughtfulness and eloquence as always. He always has a good perspective on things.
Yeah, it was nice to have him on. It's been a while since he's been on anything teat related.
Yes, it has
It was
been a
nice
while.
to meet him.
Yeah, that's your first experience with Jordan Court.
Yeah, I definitely I want to have more conversations with him because he obviously knows what he's talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
So
go
I'm
ahead.
going to have to hop off here soon because I'm going to have to finish getting myself ready for work. But I did have one quick thing that I wanted to say when we were going back to the weapons charges. If weapons charges are not brought up against Kyle Rittenhouse, I'm going to be pretty pissed.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I think that keeps coming up in my mind when I think not charging him with anything when it comes to possessing a weapon, not only of that stature, I guess, but being 17 and crossing state lines, like that, there's just clear signs right there that that is a violation of that. I don't want to hear people complain about gun control in this country then.
Yes.
When we have a serious issue right there, plain and simple, and you're not doing anything about it, don't complain to me about gun control when you obviously you don't give a shit about it.
Yes.
That's just my personal feeling on that.
Yeah. If regardless of his age, if he had been educated in the weapon and ammunition he was using, I don't think if his intentions were what he claimed they were, which was to go there to protect property and to serve as a medic, I don't think he would have picked that weapon and that ammunition, because that is used specifically to kill people, not to protect yourself. It is a weapon to kill people.
Right. That's what it is designed to do.
Yes. And if you're going to be a gun advocate and a gun owner and user, this is the perfect example of why education is so important. And there absolutely should be some kind of class you have to take before you're able to get a permit and before you're able to purchase anything.
Yep. Agreed.
And also, to your point, Abby, and if you have to go, Court, completely understand. We appreciate. Go ahead. Do you have one more thing to say?
No, it was just going to be, I got to hop off here because I'm going to get myself ready. But thanks for letting me talk with you guys about this. And I look forward to hearing the rest of it.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
We'll see ya.
Bye. So I want to your point, to both of your points, I also want to point out that what gives this kid or anybody the right to go and protect other people's property? That's not your job. You don't have a right to do that. You have a right to protect your own property, but not cross state lines with an illegal weapon and protect other people's property. That's not your job, especially a 17-year-old.
I don't think that's really what he was doing, because if you listen to the testimony, these protests, which were turning into riots, had been going on for 2 or 3 days, I believe, before, they saw the footage on the news and then decided that they were going to insert themselves in the turmoil. And I'm sorry, my
that's
kid
okay.
is okay.
My dog is barking in the background too. So
I know
in
we're
true
recording at a
true
different
teat
time, so it's
in true teat fashion, we always have
yes.
things going on in the background.
Um,
Tommy asked us, I got to go back to work, but I hope this is being recorded so we can watch later. Yes, you can watch it on YouTube or Facebook.
But yeah, so if he was going to try to protect property, as I said, he did have some ties to the community, so I can understand feeling some sense of ownership over, you know, making car lots had been burned. There were cars that were completely torched. They were lighting all kinds of stuff on fire. So I don't necessarily fault him for wanting to be there for that purpose. But when you see the video footage that they showed in the court, there were people multiple times telling these militia groups, protect the property, not the streets. Protect the property, not the streets. Meaning, tensions are clearly high. You guys are here with weapons, and you don't need to be going into the street, which you have no reason to be out there protecting. It's not owned by any citizen. It's state property or local property. But that's not what he did. He continued to try to go places where he was told not to go. The instance that led to Joseph Rosenbaum chasing him down was because he went somewhere he was expressly told not to go so that he could put out a fire that was being started a couple blocks away. And while there's nothing wrong with that inherently, when you know what the climate is and people are angry and volatile, to go there and put out a fire right in front of somebody who just started it is provocation. The behavior itself isn't bad, but given all the other circumstances, it was absolutely provocation. So yeah, I mean, protecting property, sure, that's fine. That's not all he did though.
No, and doesn't it say something that the owner of the car lots, and this is just speculation, but from what I've heard, wasn't there protecting the property? Because you don't want to know why? Because they have fucking insurance, and all those cars get replaced.
Well,
you know,
they also,
you know what I mean?
They
know that, look, a piece of property is not worth dying for. It just isn't.
Because of all the rioting that had gone on the days prior, the car lots that they were protecting didn't have cars on them anymore. They had like moved all the cars off. So really they were just there protecting the building. But
which again has insurance on it.
Right.
If your house, if a business burns down, the insurance covers it. That's the point. Like there's literally no point in being there. Like it sucks. Yes, it's horrible. It's you shouldn't do it. You know, and you should feel bad for those people. But and here's my anger too lies with the police that watched him do that. Not a single one of them said, "Hey kid, how old are you? 17? Get the fuck out of here. Go home where it's safe."
Yeah.
Where were you?
I had talked to Greg about this, and I do completely agree with you. But as I think about it, this whole protest that was getting really out of, I mean, at this point, it wasn't a protest anymore. This is one of the few examples where it was legitimately a full-blown riot.
Yep.
It was against the police because of the shooting of Jacob Blake. So all these people are out in force and really out of control because they are against the police. So while it was completely inappropriate, I do understand on like a human level, if I was a police officer in that situation, if there were a couple civilians out there who were on my side, I can understand the feeling of being like, okay, at least I have some people with me. But as a professional law enforcement person, it's not acceptable for you to be encouraging them. That is the police's job, not the civilian's job. And they know that.
Right. And their job is still to protect and serve. They did not protect and serve a 17-year-old kid who, if they would have done their job in that situation, he would have never been on trial. He would have never gone through this traumatic experience. No matter whether you think he's a piece of shit or not, he had to go through it because the police didn't do their job in this case. Abby, real quick, I'm just going to start this B-roll footage, so just make sure you unmute.
Sure.
never mind. It looks like it didn't mute us this time. I guess because I didn't put any sound in it. So from our own Greg Sterner, I want to read. He's busy working. He can't hop off here, but he did have a quote about what's going on here. He writes, "While I support a person not being found guilty if their guilt couldn't be proven, this trial sets a dangerous precedent for future wannabe freedom fighters to do the same thing, and that should scare people." And I think we kind of hit on that. We're worried. All of us are kind of worried about what happens when these two forces collide: the people protesting / and or rioting, or and the militia or the freedom fighters, the supporters of Kyle Rittenhouse and quote unquote, who believe this was self-defense, come together and meet, because I feel like that's inevitable, and that should scare people. Like, we are in a time where tensions are already high politically, and everything's made politically, political, a trial, climate change, like things that shouldn't be political are political. And now you throw this on top of it. It's scary.
This case bothers me so much because of how politicized it was. We all expressed our opinions about the case before anything had gone to court, and we had seen all the evidence that there was. But I feel like so many people, even after the trial had started and there was legitimate evidence out there, it really went right down party lines. If you were on the right, you thought he was innocent. At least you thought he was innocent. And there were so many people who were, saying that he was a hero. And then if you were on the left, you were just blindly saying that he was absolutely guilty and was a horrible human being. And after watching a huge portion of the trial live, I really do believe it falls somewhere in the middle, and no one was innocent in the situation. And as I said on the regularly scheduled episode that we put out today, I think based on everything I saw, that the prosecution did not make a good enough case to prove his guilt.
Yeah, you can't argue with that. I don't think anybody who is who is a reasonable thinker can disagree with what you're saying in that sense. The way I look at life is often moral, right? And you're seeing the images come across the screen here of Kyle Rittenhouse, what it looks like being attacked. He is, the thing that I cannot get over is from there was so many steps along the way that could have prevented him from even being there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And these people wouldn't be dead. He wouldn't have been on trial. Right. He didn't solve anything. He didn't stop the riots. Like, the fact of the matter is he was there, and he shouldn't have been there. His mother should have known where he was at all times, because that's your job as a mother when you have a 17-year-old. And his friend should have been like, "No, I'm not buying you a gun." Like, there's the police. Go home, dude. This isn't your job. Thank you. I appreciate it. Go home.
Mm-hmm.
Be safe. We got this.
Listen,
again,
there are so many things that went wrong that led to this happening. It goes all the way back to Jacob Blake getting shot. He shouldn't have resisted arrest. I know that is not a reason to get shot, but that caused the shooting. The shooting led to the protest. The protest led to the riots. The riots led to this punk kid feeling like he needed to insert himself and be, a hero soldier for the night, which led to 3 people getting seriously wounded or killed. It was a chain reaction of horrible things that happened. And anyone who says this kid is a hero is an idiot. He absolutely is not. And God, he lied so many times throughout the night because he knew he wasn't supposed to be there. He knew he wasn't supposed to be there.
Which makes me think that he went there for a specific purpose, and it wasn't just to protect property. you know, I want to read, as I'm scrolling through Facebook here, I want to read some of the comments here. Justice was served. Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty in all charges. To call this justice is a little phony. Just because we talked about this a little bit, but I want to hit on this point. Just because a law is a law does not mean it is a good law. It does not mean it's a fair law, and it does not mean it's a just law. There are stupid laws still on the books today that don't make any sense and never made any sense. There's a law in North Carolina that allows you, it's okay to beat your wife after church on a Sunday. Not the other 6 days of the week, but on Sunday, it's okay to beat your wife after church. Are you telling me that is, if you beat your wife and you're arrested in North Carolina, you go to jail, you go to trial, you're found not guilty based on that law? Do you mean to tell me that justice was served there? You're not going to convince me of that.
There is so much nuance in this trial and in all the events that happened that led up to it, that just having it narrowed down to the 3 charges that were brought against Kyle Rittenhouse, while I think I do believe that it was right for him not to have been convicted based on all the footage I saw, I think that he did have the right to defend himself. Back to the weapons charge again, he had no right to have that gun. He had no right to be there as a 17-year-old. But based solely on the charges and the events that led up to him killing 2 people and wounding the other, based on what happened to him, I do think that he was not guilty. But that's not the whole story.
It's not the whole story. You're right, and I don't think again anybody can disagree with that. My problem is with the people calling him a hero. Here's a meme that's been going around, and I don't know if this is a rumor. We haven't actually checked into this, but maybe the reason you hate this kid so much, referring to Kyle Rittenhouse, is because you align more morally with rioters and child protesters and child predators. There's little context behind that. Well, there's this thought going around amongst the Kyle Rittenhouse supporters that the people he killed were child predators. And I don't know if that's true or not, because I didn't think it was credible enough to even look into. But if that were true, he had no idea they were child predators when he shot them.
Right.
So that's
I can say
argument.
I can say, being ignorant of that allegation, that clearly that is not my motivation in who I think is innocent or guilty in the case. And, we got into a pretty heated argument about the merits of not protesting, but the protesters who, took it too far and things got out of hand, and whether it was justified or not. I believe that episode is called Understanding Rage. So if you want to go back and hear our thoughts on that, please take a listen. But I am very clearly not sympathetic of protesters and rioters. So I see the guilt on.
You believe in the right to.
Oh, I'm
protest,
sorry.
right?
I misspoke. I meant rioters and arsonists.
Yes,
I have no problem with anyone protesting.
Yeah, that and my issue too is to celebrate the fact that he, killed these people because they were potentially, and again, I don't know if those specific people were ever shown to be actually burning down buildings and cars and stuff like that. But even if they were, those people, just like Kyle Rittenhouse, deserve their day in court.
Yeah, the prosecutor made that point. Now, Gage Grosskreutz, who is the man who had his arm practically blown off, who survived, he was able to testify. As far as I am aware, there's no footage of him creating any kind of destruction, havoc whatsoever. He was there as a medic, and he was actually a certified medic. Joseph Rosenbaum, on the other hand, who was the first man who was shot, there is plenty of footage of him engaging in the chaos, lighting dumpsters on fire, being confrontational with other militia type people who were there that night. So, there was guilt all around. And while you are absolutely right that if Kyle Rittenhouse had not been there, or if he had not been there with that assault rifle, 2 people would still be alive right now. It's not like Joseph Rosenbaum was some innocent, virtuous bystander. He was as much involved in this as Kyle Rittenhouse was, which is, why the case ended the way it did.
Yeah, and also, I mean, assuming that he didn't hurt anybody himself, or if lighting a dumpster on fire was the worst thing that he ever did, that man didn't deserve to die because of it.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to get to. The prosecutor had said, was he guilty of arson and whatever else? And he was like, yeah, probably. And if he was still alive today, I would be trying him for arson. But he's not going to get his day in court because Kyle Rittenhouse took it upon himself to shoot and kill him.
Here's another comment that just makes me sick from Laura Rhodes. She's probably not listening, of course, but she writes, "Thank God," with a picture of Kyle Rittenhouse being acquitted. And Patty Rodenberger says, "God bless that boy. Wonder how the left would feel if a statue was put up for him. Laugh out loud, karma." And then Laura writes, "I'm sure they'd cry and demand a safe place." Like, these are the people that are politicizing this.
Yeah. This is where, I have said this before on the show. There's so little nuance left in politics anymore. You're either all the way on one side or all the way on the other, and you're not able to see things for what they are. You see them through the lens of the political party you associate with. And, I am a liberal. I tend to be progressive, and I think I'm being very fair and balanced on my opinions on this case. I laugh at the people who think he's a hero. He's not a hero. Is he guilty of murder? No, clearly not. As the verdict told us today. But he sure as hell is not a hero.
Yeah. And I agree. You're being very, very fair, and you've educated us on some things. And like, to my own surprise, maybe to everybody else's surprise, I agree with you about. I don't see how he could have been found guilty. Now, some of the lesser charges, I don't know how I feel about those. I don't know enough details about the actual law in Wisconsin, and if it still came down to could you prove that he wasn't self-defense, wasn't self-defense, then yeah, I guess I can see that too. But the moral aspect of this is what really, really gets me, and it's somehow being portrayed as if you thought that he is guilty of something, you are somehow anti-American because he was there defending himself.
Or
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
favor
the
of
law needs
rioting.
to change. Yeah. Right. I'm not in favor of rioting. I'm in favor of being able to protest against or for what you feel strongly about in a peaceful manner. And that's what most of the protests were. And I sure as hell am not, liberal or conservative, going to put myself in a situation that is likely to turn violent or is already violent. It's one thing if you're there and things erupt out of your control and you happen to have a gun on you and you actually are trying to go around helping people, provide medical care. Hey, to the police, is there anything I can do to help you? And again, they should say, no, you're a civilian, get the fuck out of here. But yeah, you could help me by leaving. But this kid clearly went there knowing what the situation was and that there was a potential that he was going to have to use that weapon. That is morally wrong.
Yeah.
Morally wrong, because he also, it's not like he went there thinking, hey, I really support the right to protest. I understand the racial injustice that's going on. I just want to try and knock down the violence, right? No, he went there because he is completely against what the protesters, the peaceful protesters, stand for, let alone the violent ones. And he went there specifically because he wanted to be a force against that cause.
Yeah, and two pieces of evidence that weren't admissible in court were there was a social media clip of him sitting in a car with one of his friends, commenting on two, I believe they were black, but two black people coming out of a CVS, assuming that they were shoplifting and saying that he wished he had his gun with him so he could shoot them. And there's another social media clip of him with a group of teenagers, and it's hard to tell who's on what side of the conflict, but it ends in him beating the shit out of this girl, sucker punching her in the back of the head, which is, and as I said, that wasn't allowed in court. I understand why it wasn't allowed in court, but the public has seen it. And if that doesn't give you some insight into the character of this kid, you're either stupid or being willfully ignorant.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, we have about 10 minutes before, we've been on for an hour, and I think that's enough. We've said everything that we can say. So I want to get this. I want to get your thoughts on this because you watched the most trial footage out of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Brittany writes, did y'all catch the part on Friday or Monday before jury started deliberating where there was confusion about the jury instructions and something about if the jury found Rittenhouse innocent in the first charge with Rosenbaum, they were to stop deliberating because the rest would also be not guilty? I was confused about it and still not sure what they decided the law said about that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I'm going to preface this by saying I am not a legal expert and I am not a journalist. Okay. So this is my opinion and interpretation based on what I saw. But what the jury was instructed was to only factor in if Kyle Rittenhouse was within his rights to defend himself with lethal force because there was an imminent threat to his own life. So if he was innocent in the first count with Joseph Rosenbaum, which was the first incident that happened that night, it wouldn't have made sense that he would have been guilty of the other subsequent charges. Like if he was only defending himself in the first instant of him killing someone, and he was justified in doing that, then the people who the mob who chased him down and attacked him after that were also a threat to him. Like they weren't justified in what they were doing. Therefore, they were the threat, not him. That was my understanding of what they were saying.
That makes sense. It's a great explanation. I hope that kind of clears things up for you, Brittany. Again, we're not trained in the law. We're not legal experts by any means. We're simply just repeating what we hear from the legal experts and the journalists that we watch, and we try to watch as much of a variety of those thoughts and opinions and people delivering the facts as we possibly can. We try to read as much as we can on those things, so we have a well-versed idea of what these folks are saying, and if they line up and make sense, generally that's going to be where the truth lies. So do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up, Abby?
My biggest takeaway from this is not even a takeaway. My biggest concern about the outcome of the trial, which, I thought it was going to go this way, so it's not a surprise to me. But I sincerely hope that it doesn't lead to civil unrest, especially in Kenosha. But, I think that there is a chance for it in other major cities. And I hope that I hope, I'm sorry.
Hi, Charlie.
I just worry that there is going to be civil unrest on both sides because there are going to be people who are really unhappy with the verdict in the case. And then there are going to be people who have been emboldened that, civilian militias are, okay to be out patrolling the streets. I think it's just clearly, if you look at what happened in this case, it is a powder keg situation and it's not going to end well for anyone.
Yeah. Look, you are allowed to be angry about this. You're right. You're allowed to be repulsed. You're allowed to want to punch a hole through your wall. You're allowed to be angry at the justice system. What you're not allowed to do, both morally and legally, is go out there and take it out on other people. The car dealership down the street, the local grocery store, the local retail store did not contribute to this verdict one way or the other. They did not contribute to what's going on in your town or in the world one way or another. So be angry, voice your opinion, stand out on the streets and hold signs. That's all okay. What is not okay is to turn that into violence, because now you're trying to right a wrong with another wrong, and it's not going to end well for you. Whether another Kyle Rittenhouse shows up and shoots you, or the police get you, and they will. Look, we saw it with the January 6th, right? They're still arresting people, right? They will find out what you did and who you are, and you have the rest of your life to live and try to affect change in a positive way through the proper channels. And I know that can be frustrating. And I know that can feel like it's a path that you're never going to succeed at because of how slow change can be. But right now, it's our only way to change the things that we find disgusting and repulsive. And me personally, I find it repulsive that Kyle Rittenhouse was able to be proven not guilty based on the laws that currently exist. And I encourage anybody that lives in Wisconsin, anybody that's listening to this right now, vote for the people that also find it disgusting that he could get off based on the law that currently exists, and empower them to change it, and then hold them accountable for doing so.
That's the big thing there, Jeff. It's what he was charged with, he wasn't guilty of. But I think what so many people are struggling with who felt like there was guilt there is that he isn't facing any accountability. There's no accountability, and he was not completely innocent in the situation.
No, not at all. Well, that has been our first live in a very long time. I think it was exhilarating, and I really enjoyed it. I want to do more of these. Of course, I don't hope for situations like this, but unfortunately, that is what the news is most of the time, and we have made a commitment to talk about it to our audience. So I appreciate you spending so much time on this when you're so busy. We appreciate Jordan coming on for the first time in a long time, and of course, Court. We really appreciate her hopping on before we go to work, and we appreciate all you for your comments and for watching and listening to this. And we will see you. If you haven't listened to today's episode, please do. If you already have, look forward to our deep dive into celebrities we love to hate coming on Tuesday. And also, if you've listened to today's episode, you know that we have a new sponsor, Manscaped. If you're looking for a good birthday gift for your significant other, especially ladies, you want your guys to take care of their nether regions a little bit better, go to manscaped.com, use the the code TEAT20, and that'll get you 20% off your entire order plus free worldwide shipping. So go check them out. They have a lot of great products, and we've used them personally, and they're awesome. So until next time, this has been the ever-evolving truth. You're entitled to your own opinions. You're not entitled to your own facts. We'll see you soon.